This video is brought to you by NordVPN, but more of that in a moment. Hi, I'm Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I am the Magic the Gathering content creating equivalent of an Armageddon, followed up by a Trinisphere in Commander. You don't really like it, and you keep clicking on YouTube saying don't recommend, but you still find yourself lying in bed with your partner's back turned to you, masturbating furiously over me at 2 AM in the morning. Today, I'm going to talk about something that might be a little bit controversial and will probably upset some people, but I'm going to talk about the drama. I'm going to talk about the discourse. Intrigue, upset, distress. I'm going to talk about something that's threatening the very fabric of our society. Something where, well, will nobody think of the children of Alara? I have noticed a trend in the Magic the Gathering discourse, in the community's reaction to cards we don't like or things we deem unfun. And whilst this isn't really threatening the very fabric of our society or our children, it is something that I think if we as a community work towards improving, it'll just make for a much nicer place, a much nicer time playing Magic. Today, I'm going to talk about the overwhelming negativity of the community towards things that they deem unfun, to cards, archetypes, or strategies they just dislike, and how I'm going to say to some EDH players that you probably need to just get good. Although that is very provocative, and I thought about not putting it at the beginning, because some of you are going to be like, what a bastard. But it's true. Sometimes you need to play around hate and interaction, but more of that in a moment. I was being roped the other day on Arena, and I tweeted about how being roped on Arena was my favourite. And for those of you unaware or completely oblivious, this is an example of what we call in England sarcasm. The alarming thing about that tweet, or the response to that tweet, was a few people told me that they purposefully, and they admitted this openly and publicly with their faces showing, that they purposefully rope people who play cards they don't like Ruin Crab or Revenge of the Ravens. Let's put aside for the moment that every card in Magic is someone's pet card that they love to hate. It actually baffles my mind that people are willing to admit out loud that they waste another human being's time, that they have no consideration for that human being's time. And for those of you who wonder what the fuck I'm talking about, roping is where you let the timer in Arena count down and you purposefully waste your time and the opponent's time by doing nothing. Normally as a way of, sometimes it's when you've disconnected, but normally as a way of just being bad manners because you're tilted or salty. And the reason it baffled me was well, people do it, but we all know people rope. And it's a problem that we just need to figure out a way to fix. All card games and turn-based games online need to find out a way to fix. But roping to me, I thought was something that people did like out of spite or in the moment and it felt good but they regretted it afterwards. Kind of like when you stuck your fingers up your arse midway through a wank and then you stuck them up your nose as you climax. And afterwards, you feel a little bit dirty about it all, especially because you can still smell your own feces up your nose. Where was I going with that? Yeah, it's the thing you do in the moment, and you don't admit to it afterwards, proudly, like, yeah, I'm going to waste their time. It stinks of entitlement. The idea that you're coming to a game with some preconceived notion of what people should do, and if other people aren't doing it as well, then fuck them. That is bizarre, but I think it's a growing trend in Magic, and especially in Commander 2. And I was talking about Arena at this point in time, but in Commander 2, where people expect you to play by these unwritten social contracts. I mean, social contracts exist, of course, like all social interactions function under a unwritten social contract, but I think the ones in Magic and EDH are kind of absurd and oppressive at times. Let's talk about community, cards we hate, and how we handle that. This is basically a public service announcement with more talk of wanking. And with that out of the way, let's jump to our ad integration. Do you crave the latest K-drama? Are you positively frothing at the gash at the idea of watching a soap opera from another side of the world? Perhaps you need it injected straight into your veins.
Give me K-drama or give me death.
Or perhaps you're the 2% of my audience that is Korean and you're stuck away from your home because of, well, the situation we all find ourselves in, right? And you want to watch some TV from home. All of these situations are solved by our sponsor today. They kick in the door and they say, look, you little shit, it's gonna be okay.
NordVPN!
NordVPN helps you to watch content on services like Netflix even when that content isn't usually available in your region. You want to watch Vikings on UK Netflix? Well, you're shit out of luck, usually. But using a simple click and connect to, let's say, the Canadian servers, refresh your browser and boom! Vikings. Back in the UK, do you want shows like Grey's Anatomy? Well, instead you just get shows that are related to Grey's Anatomy. Nah, mate, I want the fucking show that I want, right? Let's go back to Canada servers with a simple click of NordVPN and boom, I've got the show I want to watch instead of a dozen imitators or 50 Shades of Grey or whatever the UK version of Netflix thinks I want to watch. There is a world of content out there that you can't get hold of in your normal regions, and take back control of your online experience with NordVPN. There's a link in the description below to get yourself a huge discount off of your membership and a free month if you go to nordvpn.com/Kenobi. That's nordvpn/Kenobi, and use the code Kenobi to get that discount and to get that absolutely free extra month. One more time, that's nordvpn.com/Kenobi for a huge discount, an additional month free, and it's all risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee.
NordVPN!
Right, back to Magic the Gathering, the world's premier card game for angry nerds. Everybody has cards that they hate. I personally hate OG Vorinclex, and I really don't like Cyclonic Rift, although I see it as kind of a necessary evil in some situations, but I've never been rude to someone else playing them, and I've never tried to convince other people not to play them if I could. However, I think there appears to be a growing feeling of bitterness and, dare I say, entitlement when it comes to Magic, and in particular Commander, and how each individual wants to play. Like, my first question really is Commander cooperative? Commander is a multiplayer social experience for sure, and you aren't playing 1v1 cutthroat Magic. There is an argument when you're playing in a competitive environment in Magic the Gathering that anything goes that is legal, because your end goal is just to win. Fun is kind of secondary to that. Commander doesn't have that because it is for people sitting down and deciding to share their time playing a game. And there are varying ways to approach Commander, from power levels and competitive, because there is a competitive EDH scene, right? And I know, I've played a lot of these power levels and varied themes and styles. I've played a lot of EDH both in paper and on Magic the Gathering Online and similar, so I get that there are varying ways to approach Commander. There is a popular wisdom that we should be letting everybody play with their toys in Commander, and I get that. But I think there's a line that we've kind of crossed at this point. I recently saw someone who should not be named, because I'm not looking to dunk on them, but they were talking about how Rest in Peace was a bullshit card, because it can literally turn off entire strategies. And whilst I don't disagree that it can indeed turn off entire strategies, I don't really see the problem with that. Commander, as much as it likes to pretend to be, is not a cooperative game. 4 people are sitting down to have fun, but the objective is to kill the other players. In some ways, it's got more in common with like Monopoly than it has Dungeons and Dragons. This is not cooperative storytelling, this is not cooperative problem solving the majority of the time. Each player is aiming to win, either in the most efficient way at the higher power levels, or the most ludicrous and dramatic and fun way at lower power levels. That's just how Commander works. If your entire game plan is just to do nonsense out of your graveyard, the most abusable and easily abusable part of the whole game's mechanics, then you should be, well, you shouldn't be sour when someone shuts you down and stops you doing that through the use of, for example, Rest in Peace. Whether it be Scavenging Ooze, a Surgical Extraction if we're going real deep, or Rest in Peace, you should expect these cards to be played because, well, without some of these things, decks like Muldrotha and such are so good at just grinding down anything else around them into dust that you kind of need these sort of things to shut those decks down. Having a back and forth and interacting with your opponent is a big part of Magic. And whilst these cards like Rest in Peace are more akin to like complete hoses, it's a one and done solution that then you basically ask the question of the player playing the graveyard deck, do you have a way to deal with this? Those can be expected too, right? They are legal in the format. I know there's a social contract, but I don't think that social contract should force you to let everyone just do whatever they want. Because if the Muldrotha deck just gets to fuck about with its graveyard the whole game, they're probably going to win. I think we have this ongoing thing where we're promoting this idea of play with your toys, which makes EDH into an arms race, where 4 people just sit there and masturbate, and then one of them goes off and comes all over the table before the other ones do to continue the metaphor. In reality, you should be playing interaction, back and forth, things that shut down other players, ways to get rid of those things that shut down other players. In some ways, taking a couple of haymakers out of your deck for a couple more interaction spells, Assassin's Trophy, Force of Negation, just a capsize or a simple counter spell, is going to make the whole experience much more back and forth, much more in my opinion, enjoyable than just being like, well, you've played a rest in peace, I guess I'm fucked. Interaction, removal, and alternative ways to win that aren't your primary game plan should all go into your deck building as you get better at the game. Let's talk about banning cards for a second, because I believe it's a bit of a fetish. Every time someone on the RC or the CAG opens up a dialogue with players, usually via Twitter, RE bans, we see hundreds of replies of people waxing lyrical about X, Y, or Z and why it should be banned in Commander, and this is the weirdest shit to me. Paradox Engine is the only card that I've said that in the last like 3 or 4 years this should probably be banned in Commander, and I wasn't even completely serious in that video. I was more observing how the card just accidentally combos with everything, and do we really want a colourless accidental combo card in every deck? Then no, but it got banned anyway, so I looked like a prophet. People love to demand bans. We are now in an environment within Magic where banning shit is the norm. In competitive 1v1 environments, in 1v1 formats from standard right through to legacy and vintage, there are, well, 2 players playing, not a multiplayer aspect. There's a competitive spirit to be upheld. There are metagames that should become stale, and there's prizes on the line. So bans have become a necessary evil to dismantle the power creep and the push card designs that we've been seeing recently. Whether it be synergies that weren't meant to happen or weren't noticed, or just complete bullshit like Uro, that's why bans are so prominent right now. Commander doesn't really have any of these issues. While some cards become omnipresent, it's never in a way that is oppressive. Sol Ring is Commander's Brainstorm, but not for the same reasons. Brainstorm is omnipresent, arguably dominant in Legacy because it not only facilitates bullshit combo decks, but also lubricates the decks that can combat those combo decks. It helps to augment the checks that balance out Legacy like Force of Will and Wasteland. And believe me, I'm not even a regular Brainstorm player, so I'm not one of those people who defends Brainstorm because they play it like the Astrolabe defenders. I like decks that don't play Brainstorm, but I understand why it's present in Legacy and why we kind of need it. Sol Ring isn't like that at all. It's omnipresent, even dominant, not because it keeps the format healthy, but because it's fucking ridiculous. The best mana rock ever printed, except for maybe Black Lotus. And yes, before you smart asses ask, but what about Mark Sapphire? In the comment section, I think Sol Ring is better. 1 mana for an extra 2 every single turn is miles more important, like 90% of the time, than 1 mana for 0. Sol Rings are often a higher picking cube than a Mox. It can be pointed higher in some Highland formats, and because it has a larger impact over time, because it's better acceleration, and each turn you're getting 2 mana out of it, where you only get 1 per Mox. So each turn, the benefit of Sol Ring grows and grows and grows much faster than what you get out of your Moxen. Generally, I think Sol Ring is better than Moxen. But why isn't it banned if it's so fucking good, right? Well, I've toyed with doing satirical and not so satirical deep dives on these very facts and information about Sol Ring and how it plays in games of Magic, and asking, why isn't it banned? And one of the big reasons I didn't bother was that I believe there's a Pandora's box of Sol Ring already being in the format, and there's no reason to get rid of it, but also, perhaps this is the home for it, right? Commander is full of ludicrous shit anyway, one more Sol Ring won't hurt. But ultimately, the reason that Sol Ring isn't a problem is because Magic the Gathering in EDH is a multiplayer format. I say that like it's some sort of bullet point punchy piece of information. It's kind of obvious, but let me explain. With EDH being a 4-player game and a 100-card singleton, the impact of Sol Ring is way smaller than what it would be with smaller deck sizes and in a 1v1 environment. If one player gets ahead on a game of Commander, the politics at the table can set them as the arch enemy. What I mean by that is now that one Sol Ring on your side of the board has to compete against 3 other players who are all putting all of their resources into stopping you. So your Sol Ring might have gave you 2 mana, but each opponent has way more mana than what that Sol Ring is giving you. You've got to fight against the resources of 3 other people at the table. The Command Zone did a video, I'd say recently, I think it was like 2 years ago now, where they looked at the data that was available to them from online Commander shows like Dares and Commander Clash and similar, and they came to the conclusion that a turn 1 Sol Ring actually lowered your chance of winning. Because although it put you ahead, it made you the primary target at the table, which meant people put their resources against you. And think of it this way, even if you double your mana with a mana doubling, like, Zendikar Resurgence, or Mirari's Wake or whatever, you're doubling your mana. 3 other people, you're still not ahead on mana of your opponent, which is collectively 3 people. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is to highlight how EDH has its own valve, its own checks in place to stop cards being oppressive or problematic. And that check is simply that it's a multiplayer format. You can play the most busted card in the world, and now you've got to fight against 3 people's hands that can have the removal spells interaction for it. If people are playing removal spells and interaction, this video doesn't just boil down to play more fucking interaction and removal spells, but that is part of the issue. Every single fucking reveal of a new set, people are clambering over each other to over-exaggerate the impact of a card and suggest it needs to be banned. Do you remember Jeweled Lotus? Well, you might feel old. This is Jeweled Lotus now. It's just what it was before. It's just a card that's good sometimes. Arguably, the verdict is still out on Jeweled Lotus because a lot of us haven't had the chance to play as much Commander as we used to. Some of us are playing more via webcam, of course, and some of us just haven't played any Commander. So maybe Jeweled Lotus will be a problem once we all get back to playing Commander post-pandemic, but I doubt it very much. And whilst I'm not saying Jeweled Lotus is just not busted because of the multiplayer aspect, I think it's actually strictly worse than Sol Ring like 90% of the time. The point I'm getting at is that it's very rare that a card comes out that needs to be banned. A lot of the time, people are asking for bans of cards that they just don't enjoy playing against, that they think is unfun or not in the spirit of Commander. And I think that's kind of fucking stupid. All that said, I do think there is a almost like fetishization of bannings by the Magic community, by players and by content creators. There are definitely creators out there who write or make videos about Magic and Commander in particular, who want to have the same controversies that we're seeing with the 60 card formats. A ban every week or two gives them something to write and talk about and to generate those clicks and views. I'm often accused of being clickbaity on Twitter, which is, yeah, whatever. I think it's just people being fucking bitter. But I do think there are people who want that for Commander. They want to have that controversy over the new pushed card. And half the time there isn't a controversy to be had because the cards are perfectly fucking reasonable. It is no secret that power creep has been on the uptick. And every set seems to send eternal formats reeling, spiraling, and causing quite the stir amongst its players, communities, and creators. Uro is fucking awful. Oko has been banned out of everywhere. These things are just like common knowledge at this point. I've talked about them so much, it's kind of like, but I want to mention it because some people watching this video may not be aware of this. Commander doesn't have this issue with Oko because it has the built-in failsafe of multiple players being able to deal with it. That's not to say we don't have awfully awful hot takes from writers and content creators looking to decry the latest card as oppressive or not fun. When Commander Legends previous seasons was in full swing, there was no shortage of discourse to engage with. And while some cards are still questionable for many, namely Lotus, Hull Breach, and Opposition Agent, the funniest one that I saw a couple of creators losing their fucking minds over was Tevesh Zat. I think there's a tendency for creators and players to almost, like I said, fetishize the controversies because they want something to converse about, meme about, and make content about, right? Like, we all get stuck in these cycles of negativity. I'm trying my hardest not to myself. But I guess if you shout about enough cards per set, one of your shouting bouts will be correct, because one of the cards will come out to be a problem. So it's like throwing a lot of darts at a board and one of them will hit, right? We all love to hate. I think Zat brought a visceral reaction out on some people because he has a few things that people really hate passionately. Some people absolutely hate the idea of walkers as commanders, and I honestly rarely see a complaint against walkers as commanders that makes sense, honestly. I'm not exactly for it, but I don't get the vehement hate of damaging the spirit of Commander by allowing people to play Planeswalkers. But on top of that, Zat steals things. He gains control of other people's toys. The horror. The abstract horror. Won't somebody think of the poor commanders? The list of things that you can find people have written like poorly worded diatribes or made videos about that they hate in Magic is endless. Whether this be Twitter threads or Reddit threads or, God forbid, Facebook group posts with terrible fucking grammar going off on one about Revenge of the Ravens. The amount of things that are in Magic that someone finds annoying is fucking endless. Net deckers, milling, stealing people's stuff, turning off your graveyard, turning off end of the battlefield effects, counterspells, hexproof, flash, big mana, mass land destruction, singular land destruction, powerful lands that make big mana, protection from X, counter magic, blue in general, taxing effects, and stacks in general. And that's just what I've jotted down on my notes before starting to record. I'm sure I can come up with more if I just took some more time to figure this shit out. Like, Magic players, are you okay? Magic players, do you actually like Magic? The funny thing is, when you start to unpack all of these, you'll find that some people hate two things that are like the antithesis to each other. In one game, you'll play a strip mine and someone at the table will groan and be like, oh, you're playing strip mine? Next game, they complain that someone's guy's Cradle or Cabal Coffers put them miles ahead, and you're sat over there like, I guess if only I had a fucking strip mine, right? The point I'm getting at is that you might dislike or find unfun. I mean, that's completely fair. You can find things unfun. I don't like playing against Flash in 1v1 ladder on Arena. That it takes a long time. The decks I played had to be bad against it. Sometimes I'll win, but it takes a while to get there. Having all your spells counted, it just isn't a fun experience. It's not a fun play pattern. But I'm not going to begrudge someone else playing it. I'm not going to rope them. I'm not going to cause a fucking stir about it and like tweet at Wizards asking them to remove Flash from the game. I will when things get banned because they're fucking broken, like Uro. But like just general mechanics like Flash is no. There's a big difference between things that are warping metagames and things you just don't enjoy very much. They're two different things. If you go to a game store or a GP post-pandemic or whatever in the future, and you feel disgruntled or upset or frustrated at someone else playing cards that you don't enjoy or find fun, you need to take a second to compose yourself and do some inner checks, because that's on you, not on them. Playgroups have better social checks, right? You can all agree that you don't like mass land destruction and avoid it. But when you're playing in a public situation, online or in a GP side event, for example, there is this fact that people have signed up to play the same format as you, which has a banned list or a restricted list or whatever, but they haven't signed up to play to your unwritten rules. The fact that you believe Hull Breacher or Opposition Agent are just absolute no-go, social faux pas. And I get that you want to enjoy playing your game of Commander, I get that. But I'm wondering if we are adopting this idea that we can just say things aren't okay, as opposed to learning to deal with them. There are huge memes in this community, right? Don't play mass land destruction, don't play Stax, and all this kind of stuff. And memes and jokes are fine. But these are accessible game pieces, and they work into strategies that are valid and that other people do find fun. Personally, since getting so deep into Legacy over the years, I've become more and more in love with prison and locking my opponents out and then beating them with a win con that is insurmountable advantage or an inevitability that they can't deal with. Now, I don't actually play that much in Commander, mainly because of the social faux pas, right? But people are really adverse to you playing lock pieces or prison pieces in Commander because it's unfun. My question is, why can't you play through these things? I think as a community we are too keen to tell each other to let other people play with their toys, whilst demonizing people whose toys interact on an axis we aren't used to or prepared for. I think Commander can benefit heavily from us all being willing to learn and up our game a little. Remove a couple of your haymakers from your deck and play more interaction is one thing. When the mono-white player plays a Ravagers of War and you get to make your lands indestructible with a heroic intervention, it's going to be a very satisfying back and forth and incredible moment, as opposed to a mountain of salt because no one was prepared to deal with anything your opponents were doing. I get that heroic intervention versus mass land destruction is a kind of narrow scenario, but I mean, to be honest, I'm starting to think every Commander deck should have a mass indestructible effect in it if it's available in your colours, because it's pretty good. In some ways, what I'm saying boils down to stop being a whiny bitch and play more interaction. And whilst I don't want that to be the takeaway from this video, I think that's probably a mantra we could adopt a bit better in Commander, right? Instead of just like rolling your eyes and starting Twitter threads about cards we all hate, why don't we learn to play against these cards that are valid things that aren't banned and will exist forevermore, as opposed to demonizing people who want to play a Hull Breacher? I strongly believe that being able to claw your way back into a game or get out from under a lock piece is a huge part of Magic. It's one of the interactive puzzles that multiple players can take part in and politic through. Perhaps I've played far too much Modern Legacy or other 1v1 Highlander variants and enjoy this puzzle solving element more than most of beating out prison decks, or Control that's trying to counter all your stuff and blowing up the world over and over. But I generally think that MTG players can learn and improve and adapt better if we stop asking people not to bring something that we struggle against. Sometimes the things people ask others not to bring aren't even that powerful. Like, Mill in Commander isn't even that good, and will often just enable the graveyard deck on the other side of the board that no one's got a Rest in Peace for, because it's considered not polite to play a Rest in Peace. So some things are hated for a reason, but I think we can still learn to play around them. Some things are hated for very little reason, like a visceral, emotional, irrational reaction. So again, why are we telling people not to play things that they might enjoy playing? Honestly, I'm not just saying get good. That is not what I'm doing, because that's not helpful, right? That gamer mentality meme is not helpful. But I do think we should all be a bit more accepting of the idea of learning from things that we don't quite understand or aren't prepared for initially, and adapting to and growing from. So EDH is more than just 4 people sat around playing their haymakers and seeing who gets there first. I think we're just very softly hand-holdy to EDH as a community, as a format. Everyone's got to play with their toys. And I think the stigma around certain archetypes or certain playstyles is getting a bit out of control, and it's bleeding from things that are a bit more legitimately frustrating, like mass land destruction slowing a game down and making the game go another hour, to people being just uncontrollably upset about mill. I've seen this too. There seems to be a thing. Anecdotally, it feels like it's more common now than it was as people complain about mill in Commander. It's like, are you okay? Because it doesn't seem like it. So that's my 2 cents. That's the problem I think is confronting Commander as a format going forward. I don't think it's destroying the format or the community, but I think the community and the format would be better if we were just willing to learn and improve and play around things that we at the moment tell people not to play because they're not very nice. What do you think? Do you think I'm being too lenient on mass land destruction or Stax pieces on mill, heaven forbid? Which, God, that's funny to put those in the same category, but I feel like they have to be now with the stigma attached to these things. Let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. If you want to support the channel, there's a link in the description below to NordVPN, the sponsor of this video, and to Patreon, of course, as well. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I'll see you in the next video, and ta-ta for now.